Let me introduce you to Mardre Meyer. He is the Creative Director of Source IBA.
Yeah, I think, yes, it's on already. I think stalking my Instagram is probably the most boring thing ever. I'm prolifically bad at it, so I always get little notes from my studio going, you've been there for 2 days, why haven't you posted anything? But yes, food is important in our studio, so we have an annual bun off, which we test all the available hot cross buns. We see it as our service to society. So if we're speaking about luxury, luxury is the best hot cross bun you can find. You can ask me for the notes a little bit later. So I'm just looking for here we have the clicker. So when we start talking about luxury, I kind of have to talk a little bit about what we do. I don't want to turn this into a testimonial about our studio. We do commercial interiors across the African continent, in particular hospitality. That's our stronghold, so we work all across Sub-Saharan Africa, Indian Ocean Islands, a little bit in the unconventional parts of the Middle East, and now we're even working in China. But Africa is really our passion. So when we start looking, and the reason I'm telling you all of this is when we start looking at trends and where things are going, people often ask us, what are trends in hospitality? And in hospitality, we can't really be set on trends because our projects last so long and they have to last for so long after that. So, today's terracotta arch will be outdated by the time we install it. So we really have to look at things in much larger life cycles. So we have to look at elements that I like to call movements. So elements that affect how people live, how they want to live, and how they're making decisions, anything from the product that they're buying, to the place they're dining, to the hotel that they're staying in. So looking at those, we're by no means professional trained forecasters or anthropologists or any of those clever people. We do it through a whole bunch of media. We do it through the experiences that we have. So if we, from our point of view, what are the elements that cause these movements? Movements really happen in much larger cycles. It's sort of a 10 to 15-year cycle, and movement in our estimation really happens when people need to question their own value system. And value systems will only be challenged when there is something that people feel on their skin or they feel on their back. Nobody wants to change. If there's nothing that's driving you to change, we will not change. We will continue to do the same thing over and over again. So we need major things to happen for lifestyles to change. So to understand where we are today and where we're going in the future, I'm going to have to take you back a little bit. And as I said, these things happen in very, very long cycles. So if I take you back to 2006, I hope you all remember a guy called Al Gore. He started this campaign called An Inconvenient Truth. It was a film, it was a book, he traveled all over. And he tried really hard to campaign and kind of get everybody to live a little bit more consciously and think about global warming and think about the choices that we make. And he was moderately successful. And part of that moderate success, in my estimation, is because shortly before that we went through what I call the Dubai era, where we were just building cities and building really big things, and everything was opulent and excessive. So nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody wanted to listen to some guy saying, think about the water that you're using. But fortunately for all of us, shortly after that, 2007, 2008, we had a global economic recession. And the moment people started feeling this thing on their skin and on their backs, things started to change. So it's taken all that time, we're now in 2019, really for all of those things to become part of our lifestyle. So, I've read quite a bit of things of what this recession caused. It's estimated that in continental Europe, out of 5 people in a family, 3 were affected by this recession. So that's either losing your job or losing part of your income. So suddenly, when people lost part of their income, we were having a conversation about, why am I buying bottled water? I should be able to drink water from my tap, right? Why am I driving to a mall to shop for a whole lot of things when I should be walking down the road or cycling down the road to buy from a local supermarket? Suddenly we had an explosion of hipsters on commuter bikes, and it was the coolest thing ever. And really it all came out of a space that was really necessary. So the only thing that motivated us to change was a major occurrence that people really felt on their skin. So what that's led us to is I didn't lose my pictures. That is a blank grey screen, and there's not a lot of images coming. So luxury really kind of speaks to context. It's kind of what Sarah was alluding to as well. Luxury is context. When you're traveling for business, the most luxurious thing you can have is magnificent Wi-Fi, a good bed, and a wonderful shower. When you're traveling for leisure, we're seeing more and more resorts that specifically have black zones where there is no technology and no Wi-Fi and no one can reach you. So the same element means luxury or disturbance depending on your context. But I gave you this whole background story because we're kind of arrived at a space now that I kind of want to call something along the lines of the age of consciousness. While I was researching, we could always rely on social media to kind of give us the best lines, right? So I was looking for a whole lot of things, and I came across this little meme that said, "Nice is the new gangster." And I think that describes it the best. We're all obsessed with where things are from, who's making them, what is the origin, what are you doing with your grey water, are you planting your own vegetables? That's all become really important in a very short space of time. It feels like a really short space of time, but as I said, it kind of happened in quite a long cycle. So this consciousness leads us to a whole lot of questions that we see travelers asking, when they're making decisions. And what we also like to do when we're researching kind of all of these movements is to specifically not look at architecture or interior design, but really look at other things. What other brands are doing, what shoes people are wearing, what all of these other elements are, so that we can build that back into what we do. So what we're seeing is just a whole lot of questions, and all of these questions are things that are far more emotive than we've ever asked. Before, luxury was a question of, what is the wool content in the carpet in your bedroom? What is the level of the specification of the tap? But we're seeing really big other questions that is really changing the game. So luxury is also truth. Truth we see expressed in quite a lot of elements. In the hospitality market in particular, we're seeing the rise of the lifestyle brands. These are brands that say, we don't really care to be fit into any star rating. We're not 3 or 5 star, because the travelers are saying, even if I can afford 5 star, I don't necessarily want to be in a place where I'm paying as part of my room rate for somebody to sit in the basement and wait in case I'm going to order some room service, which I know I'm not going to order. So give me a service that is particular to what I need, and I'm willing to pay a really good price for that. So it's not about affordability, it's about a consciousness, and it's about a truth to say, this is what I need for this particular experience, and that's what I'm willing to pay for. But we're also seeing that truth expressed in a whole lot of different things. People are asking questions about what is in this food. So not that we want to emulate anything about this brand in particular, but even a brand like McDonald's is now showing what's in their food all of the time. Their whole brand structure has changed. What you see displayed in stores is a far more inviting, home-driven, cafe-driven experience, and an honesty about what's in their food. 10 years ago, nobody knew what was in their food. Now we all know. So one of the other elements of luxury that we see is clarity. And this is just kind of cutting through a whole lot of the stuff that we're inundated with. There's so much around. We have billboards, we have ads, we have Instagram, we have all kinds of things. So if we look at a brand like Aesop, their branding is beautiful black typography on a clear white background. And the message in that is that that the brand recognizes that we're all inundated with all of this advertising speak all of the time. So the biggest luxury they can give you is to be as clear as possible in how they communicate. But again, that's a really nice kind of luxury-driven brand. If we look at other more commercial brands, Coca-Cola have gone from a Coke tin that had a drop shadow on the Coca-Cola and it had little water drops of condensation printed on that, to a flat red background and a flat white writing. And even now here locally, they've dropped even the sub-brand. So it's now Coke no sugar, Coke no caffeine, not Coke light, Coke zero. So all of that is kind of speaking to this reductionist quality that says, don't give me all of this other stuff. Just give me the truth, give me this clarity, give me this, get directly to the point. And this idea that less is better. Luxury is also respect, and respect we see in a lot of a need for local sourcing. Everyone's asking questions about, and if we compare it to before, sort of in the early 2000s, all the rage was fusion cooking. So that was kind of taking an exotic ingredient from one part of the world, cooking it in a way that is a cooking method from another part of the world and bringing it together here. But all of that takes a lot of input. Now, if we're looking at restaurants, everyone's talking about local sourcing. Some restaurants are growing their own vegetables on site. It's all sourced within a 5-kilometer radius. They're talking about top to toe, that we're using the whole carcass if we're using animals. So it's a completely different kind of value proposition. It's a respect for where all of these things are from, and all of the things that we consume. One of the larger elements of this movement is the sense of community. Technology, I think, is really the thing that has driven this. Technology, a number of years ago, was all about, gosh, maybe I'm really showing my age, but it was about you were fancy if you had the smallest flip phone, right? The smaller the phone, the better. Now we're in the space where we're going, the biggest smartphone is what is shown luxury. So it's completely flipped that. But the real message in technology is that at some point, there was an exclusionary kind of space with technology. Not everybody had access to it. Not everybody had a mobile phone. Then not everybody had a phone with a color screen. Not everybody had access to a whole lot of things. Not everybody had access to Wi-Fi. We've now at a point where technology is taken for granted. We assume that everybody has access to all of this on whichever platform you do it, on an iPad, on a phone, on your computer, whatever. So technology is no longer the status. We assume that it's there. But what technology has given us is freedom of movement. So we can work in different places. We can be a business all by ourselves. We can be a whole office all by ourselves in different locations. So when things like Facebook and all of these online elements started, the big criticism was that we are alienating communities. People no longer need people because we are just communicating to digital communities. And in fact, quite the opposite. This year at the Chelsea Flower Show, the largest, most expensive garden was the Facebook garden. It got a lot of criticism. Everybody was saying, the critics were saying, why is the platform that are encouraging kids to not engage with the outside, being so pretentious that they're installing a garden? And actually the statistics back from Facebook was that the most prolific groups on Facebook are gardening groups. So actually this technology platform has created a kind of an analog community. So how we relate that back, I mean, we all have seen sprouting up like mushrooms everywhere are co-working spaces. So even though technology has enabled us to say we can work anywhere, I don't have to work in an office, I don't even have to be part of a company. There's this need that we have inherently as human beings to be together, to be with people. So it's this prolific rise of co-living, co-working. Co-living is kind of rising in a completely different way to what we had seen it before. We've always had things like communes and people kind of living in same spaces. Co-living is a completely different offering. It's a decision at a luxury level that says I'm willing to pay more to live in a well-furnished apartment where I have interaction with other people, but I don't have the burden of mortgage. I can travel as much as I want because my technology enables me to potentially not be living in the city for 3 months every year. I can be traveling the world. So it's a completely different value proposition. And then the last one I'll go to is familiarity. This is probably the biggest influencer in the hospitality space, and it's driven by platforms like Airbnb and what Airbnb and other such platforms brought. It brought this sense that also through our technology and through media, travelers are feeling that it's valid that by the time I get to Bangkok, I've now followed quite a few people from Bangkok on Instagram. I've been on just about everything. It is valid for me to say I'm only there for 2 days, but I want to feel like a local. I want to go have coffee where locals have coffee. I want to eat the thing that they eat. I want to live the way they live, and I want to see things from a local perspective. So the sense of familiarity is really what's kind of driving a lot of what we're doing in hospitality, that installations feel far more domestic, that there's a great sense of purpose, that there is a sense of ownership, that there is a real local connection with what the property offers. And familiarity also, I'll just kind of drop in another little element there. There's, in history, this is all from, it's not my own research, it's from anthropologists. In history, when we look at humanity, after times of extreme hardship, there's always a time of intense retrospection. So, for example, after the World Wars, everybody tries to kind of recreate what their grandparents lived like because it feels safe, and we don't feel threatened by that. So where we are now is really a kind of an expression of the extreme threats. We haven't. It wasn't a world war, but we had a global economic recession. We had internationally, we have Donald Trump as a president. We have Brexit. Here we have the Gupta Gate, we have Nkandla, all things that make people feel really threatened. And the way to kind of counter that on a very intuitive level is by familiarity and things that feel like the good old way of doing it. So, people are asking the questions of, I should know my local butcher rather than just buying an anonymous prepackaged thing. I should know a fishmonger. I should know where this product is from. I should prefer to buy handmade leather shoes than something just manufactured. So that's nearly all of it. So if I kind of have to leave you with a little bit of a takeout, then I think luxury is context, as I said. Where you are is how you will require the luxury around you. Context is connection. If we understand the context, we understand the connection to the locale, we understand the connection to the people in that arena. Connection is experience. Once we understand the connection, we can really build experience that feel familiar, that feel local, that feel like they have integrity. And then really, experience, my friends, is the new gimmick. Experience is what everybody is looking for. That's what everybody's willing to pay just about anything for. So it's not about the size of the room, it's not about the density of the carpet, it's not about how fancy anything is. If you're offering me a unique experience with integrity, that's what people are willing to pay for. That's it.
Thank you, Mardre.